Early 1944, over the cold, shattered skies of Nazi Germany, Reichsmarschall Hermann Göring made a promise to his Führer and to the German people. No enemy bomber will ever reach the fatherland. For 3 long years, that boast held a bitter truth. High above Europe, thousands of brave young American airmen in their B-17 flying fortresses fought and died in brutal isolation. They bled over Schweinfurt. They burned over Regensburg. They paid for every mile of daylight with flesh, steel, and courage. The Luftwaffe's elite jet and fighter squadrons thought they were untouchable behind their radar grids and heavy cannons. They believed American resolve would crack under the sheer weight of casualties. They were deadly wrong, because 4,000 miles away across the Atlantic, American ingenuity and industrial might were forging a weapon that would shatter the Third Reich's delusion forever. When General Jimmy Doolittle took command of the 8th Air Force, he issued a simple, ruthless directive to his fighter pilots. Stop flying formation with the bombers. Go hunt the Luftwaffe. Find them, unleashed, and destroy them wherever they fly. And then came the machine that changed history. Equipped with drop tanks and a roaring Merlin engine, the P-51 Mustang did what no one thought possible. It didn't just escort the bombers to Berlin. It hunted down the finest pilots Nazi Germany had left, right over their own airfields. It said that when Hermann Göring first saw those silver wings glinting over the Reichstag, he turned to his officers and admitted the war was lost. This is the story of how American grit, tactical flexibility, and the long-range fighter broke the back of the Luftwaffe and cleared the skies for absolute victory. To understand the magnitude of this aerial clash, one must look back to the dark early years of the air campaign, between 1942 and late 1943. At that time, the United States Army Air Forces committed to a bold, highly controversial doctrine, unescorted daylight precision bombing. The philosophy was simple on paper, but brutal in practice. American military strategists, deeply influenced by interwar air power theorists like Julio Douhet and Billy Mitchell, believed that massive, tightly packed formations of heavy bombers, bristling with defensive heavy machine guns, could fight their way through any air defense network, destroy vital enemy war industries, and return home safely without needing fighter protection. The instruments designed to carry out this strategy were engineering marvels of their day: the Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress and the consolidated B-24 Liberator. These heavy bombers were built to withstand staggering amounts of combat damage while raining high explosives on industrial targets with high accuracy using the top-secret Norden bomb site. The crews operating these planes were exceptionally brave young men, pilots, navigators, bombardiers, and gunners who flew at sub-zero temperatures, surrounded by flak and enemy fighters, knowing that every mission could easily be their last. They flew in tight, interlocking defensive structures known as combat boxes, designed to maximize the mutual fire of hundreds of Browning 50 caliber machine guns against incoming interceptors. The theory suggested that no single enemy fighter could breach a wall of hundreds of heavy machine guns firing simultaneously from multiple angles. However, as the daylight campaign pushed deeper into Western Europe, this doctrine faced a devastating reality check. The Allied fighters of the early war era, such as the legendary British Supermarine Spitfire and the heavy American Republic P-47 Thunderbolt, were world-class fighting machines in short-range combat, but they had a fatal limitation: internal fuel capacity. As the heavy bombers crossed the English Channel and entered deep into occupied France, Belgium, or Germany, the fighter escorts reached the absolute limit of their operational range. Low on fuel, the fighters were forced to turn around and head back to base, waving farewell to the air crews they had protected for the first leg of the journey. The moment those Allied escorts turned back, the skies over Germany transformed into a slaughterhouse. The Luftwaffe's fighter command, led by experienced tactical minds, had carefully studied American flight paths and developed a sophisticated, highly organized defense grid known as the Kammhuber Line. utilizing long-range radar systems, ground observers, and specialized radio direction networks. German radar operators tracked incoming bomber streams with lethal precision. As soon as the American fighters withdrew, vectoring stations scrambled dozens of German interceptor squadrons to slaughter the undefended bombers. German aircraft, like the Focke-Wulf FW-190 and the Messerschmitt Bf-109, adapted their tactics with terrifying efficiency. German pilots quickly realized that attacking the rear of a B-17 formation meant flying directly into the concentrated crossfire of multiple heavy machine guns mounted in the tail, top turret and ball turret. Therefore, they developed aggressive head-on attack tactics. Swooping in from high altitude at closing speeds exceeding 500 miles per hour, German fighters aimed heavy cannon fire straight into the plexiglass noses of the lead bombers. These head-on attacks killed the pilots, shattered command structures, destroyed flight decks, and sent 40-ton bombers spiraling out of control into the countryside below before the gunners could even track the incoming threats. The human cost of this unescorted campaign reached its tragic climax in late 1943. During the double-strike raid on the vital industrial centers of Schweinfurt and Regensburg, as well as subsequent deep penetration missions against targets deep in the Reich, American air crews faced unprecedented slaughter. On Black Thursday, October 14, 1943, during the second raid on Schweinfurt's ball-bearing factories, 60 B-17 bombers were shot down, and over 100 more suffered severe combat damage. Hundreds of highly trained airmen were killed, wounded, or captured in a matter of hours. Casualty rates among bomber squadrons surged past 20%, a level of loss that was mathematically unsustainable for any military force over time. The daylight bombing doctrine was on the brink of total collapse, and high-ranking Allied commanders faced a grim truth. Without long-range air superiority, an amphibious invasion of Western Europe was completely impossible. Yet while German leaders celebrated these temporary defensive victories, the true strength of the United States was stirring across the ocean. The American war effort was built on a foundation that Nazi Germany simply could not match: unmatched industrial power and engineering adaptability. American factories in Detroit, Seattle, Wichita, and Southern California were operating around the clock, producing war material at speeds that baffled foreign observers. But solving the crisis in the skies over Europe required more than just building more bombers. It required an engineering breakthrough that could redefine aerial warfare. That breakthrough arrived through a remarkable cross-Atlantic collaboration between American manufacturing and British aviation engineering. North American Aviation had originally designed an aircraft known as the P-51 Mustang. In its initial iterations, powered by an American Allison engine, the Mustang was a sleek, aerodynamically brilliant airframe. But its performance degraded rapidly at high altitudes where heavy bombers operated. Recognizing the plane's hidden potential, visionary engineers made a revolutionary decision. They mated the aerodynamic P-51 airframe with the high-altitude, supercharged British Rolls-Royce Merlin engine, manufactured under license in America by the Packard Motor Car Company. The combination was pure magic. The Merlin-powered P-51 Mustang was fast, extremely maneuverable at high altitudes, and possessed exceptional visibility and handling characteristics. It reached top speeds exceeding 430 miles per hour and could operate smoothly at altitudes over 30,000 feet. But the ultimate challenge remained: how to extend the range of a high-performance single-seat fighter so that it could fly all the way from bases in England to targets deep inside Eastern Germany and Poland, stay over the combat zone to engage enemy fighters, and make the long journey back home. The answer was an elegant, remarkably simple engineering innovation: high-capacity, lightweight, jettisonable drop tanks. Made from paper composite, pressurized rubber, or light aluminum, these external fuel tanks were attached under the wings of the Mustang. They carried hundreds of gallons of extra high-octane aviation gasoline, allowing the P-51 to cruise across occupied territory using external fuel first. When enemy fighters appeared, or when the formation reached the combat area, the American pilot simply flipped a release lever inside the cockpit, dropping the empty external tanks. In an instant, the heavy, long-range escort transformed into a nimble, razor-sharp dogfighter, ready to engage the best interceptors the Luftwaffe could muster. Simultaneously, a fundamental shift in military leadership brought this new technology to its full potential. In early 1944, General Karl Spaatz assumed command of the strategic air forces in Europe, bringing in Lieutenant General Jimmy Doolittle to take command of the 8th Air Force in England. Doolittle was an aviation pioneer and an aggressive combat leader, famously known for leading the daring 1942 bombing raid on Tokyo. Upon taking command, Doolittle walked through the operations room at fighter headquarters and noticed a sign on the wall that reflected old, passive doctrine. It read, "The primary duty of the fighters is to protect the bombers." Doolittle immediately ordered the sign taken down and replaced it with a radical, uncompromising operational directive. "The primary duty of the fighters is to destroy the Luftwaffe." This simple change in strategy changed everything. Under Doolittle's new doctrine, American fighter pilots were no longer forced to fly in tight defensive positions right next to the slow-moving heavy bombers, acting as mere bodyguards. Instead, Doolittle unchained his Mustang and Thunderbolt squadrons. He ordered them to sweep dozens of miles ahead of the main bomber formations, hunting down German fighter squadrons while they were still attempting to assemble in the sky or take off from their runways. Furthermore, American pilots were authorized to pursue fleeing German planes all the way down to the tree line, strafing enemy airfields, destroying parked aircraft, hitting supply trains, destroying radar facilities, and shooting up fuel dumps on their return journey. The culmination of this new aggressive strategy manifested in February 1944 during Operation Argument, historically remembered as Big Week. For 6 consecutive days, the 8th Air Force based in England and the 15th Air Force based in Italy launched massive, coordinated strikes against the heart of Germany's aviation industry. Hundreds of B-17s and B-24s, escorted by hundreds of P-51 Mustangs and P-47 Thunderbolts, pounded airframe assembly plants, ball-bearing factories, and engine production facilities across the Reich. During Big Week, the Luftwaffe took the bait. German Fighter Command scrambled every available interceptor to defend their industrial base, leading to the largest and most violent air battles in human history. German pilots fought with desperate bravery, but they walked directly into a trap. While the heavy bombers inflicted severe damage on factory infrastructure, the escorting Mustangs engaged the German fighters in brutal dogfights from 30,000 feet down to treetop level. The impact of this aggressive strategy on the German war machine was immediate and devastating. When the 8th Air Force launched massive bombing raids against Berlin and key industrial centers throughout the spring of 1944, German interceptor squadrons scrambled into the clouds expecting to encounter defenseless bomber boxes, as they had in previous years. Instead, as they climbed through the clouds, they found swarms of silver-winged P-51 Mustangs sweeping down from higher altitudes with speed and overwhelming firepower. The German interceptors were completely unprepared for this shift. To dismantle heavy B-17 bombers, many German FW-190s and Bf-109s had been heavily modified with extra armored plating, heavy cannon systems, and unguided air-to-air rockets. These modifications made the German fighters heavy, slow, and sluggish in air-to-air combat. Against the fast, highly maneuverable P-51 Mustangs, these heavy interceptors were virtually defenseless. Day after day, week after week, the sky over Germany became a furnace that consumed the German Air Force, while Germany was still capable of manufacturing fighter airframes. Late into 1944, inside underground factories and hidden forest assembly sites, It suffered a catastrophic loss that no industrial machine could replace, the permanent loss of its experienced combat pilots. Facing endless waves of aggressive, well-trained American airmen, the Luftwaffe lost its most decorated squadron leaders, flight instructors, and veteran aces in a matter of months. Legends of the German Air Force, who had survived hundreds of missions since the invasion of Poland and France, were killed in action or severely wounded, leaving critical leadership gaps that could never be filled. To fill these devastating gaps in their ranks, the German High Command was forced to throw young, inexperienced recruits into battle with only a fraction of the flight training hours required for modern air combat. While an American pilot entered combat with hundreds of hours of advanced training in formation flying, gunnery, instrument navigation, and aerial tactics, a German replacement pilot in mid-1944 was lucky to have 40 hours of total flight time. These novice pilots, short on fuel and basic flight training, were mercilessly cut down by seasoned American aviators who completely dominated the European skies. Furthermore, the strategic bombing campaign now had full protection to systematically destroy the industrial heart of the Third Reich. American heavy bombers focused relentlessly on synthetic oil production facilities, oil refineries, chemical plants, and critical railway networks. Within months, Germany's military fuel supplies were crippled. Tanks were left stranded on roadsides without gasoline. New fighter aircraft could not be flight tested, and remaining pilots could not even run basic training missions due to the absolute lack of aviation fuel. The Luftwaffe was effectively grounded not just by American bullets, but by a total lack of oil. Even when German engineers produced advanced technological marvels late in the war, such as the revolutionary Messerschmitt Me 262, the world's first operational jet fighter, it was far too late to alter the outcome. Although the Me 262 possessed superior speed and heavy armament, American Mustang pilots quickly adapted their tactics. They patrolled known German jet airfields, waiting in the clouds to pounce on the jets during their most vulnerable moments, when they were taking off or slowing down to land on their runways. Technological superiority was completely neutralized by overwhelming tactical dominance, superior numbers, and operational awareness. The tactical versatility of the P-51 Mustang extended far beyond bomber escort missions. Once the threat of Luftwaffe interceptors in the air was drastically reduced, American pilots turned their attention to the ground. Armed with 50 caliber machine guns, rockets, and small bombs, Mustang squadrons conducted relentless low-level sweeps across Western Europe. They struck German military transport, destroyed locomotives, obliterated anti-aircraft batteries, and hunted down troop movements along highways and rail lines. This continuous pressure paralyzed German military movement during daylight hours, making it nearly impossible for the Wehrmacht to reinforce its positions or move supplies efficiently. The strategic air campaign also served a vital intelligence purpose. By forcing the Luftwaffe into mass air battles over Western Europe, Allied commanders were able to accurately assess the enemy's declining strength. Ultra-signals intelligence and aerial reconnaissance photos confirmed that German fighter production, while numerically high on paper, was rendered completely ineffective by the lack of fuel, trained pilots, and operational airfields. Every mission, flown by 8th Air Force bombers, brought the Reich closer to complete logistical paralysis. By the spring of 1944, the once feared Luftwaffe was a broken, shattered force. Its airfields were ruined, its fuel supplies were burnt, and its sky was permanently occupied by American air power. Reichsmarschall Hermann Göring's boast had turned into an embarrassing symbol of defeat. When Göring himself inspected captured American equipment and witnessed Mustang squadrons flying freely over Berlin, his private admissions reflected the brutal reality. The air war was lost, and with it, the defense of the Reich. This total air supremacy was the single most critical prerequisite for the Allied invasion of Western Europe, Operation Overlord. Supreme Allied Commander General Dwight D. Eisenhower knew that an amphibious assault against a fortified coastline was one of the most dangerous military operations in history. If German bombers and ground attack aircraft were able to strike the invasion fleet or rain destruction on soldiers landing on the beaches, the assault could easily end in catastrophe. However, because Doolittle's fighters and Spatz's bombing campaign had systematically destroyed German air strength in the preceding months, Eisenhower could move forward with supreme confidence. When Allied troops stormed the beaches of Normandy on June 6, 1944, the German Air Force was virtually absent from the battle space. Eisenhower was able to look his infantry soldiers in the eye and give them an absolute guarantee. If you see an aircraft over you, it will be ours. Out of thousands of Allied ships and infantry landing craft on D-Day, only a handful of German sorties were able to reach the invasion beaches, failing completely to disrupt the massive Allied landings. The air victory over Western Europe reshaped the ground war as well. With total air supremacy secured, Allied ground forces operated under an umbrella of continuous air support. P-51 Mustangs, P-47 Thunderbolts and medium bombers acted as flying artillery, responding to requests from infantry and armored units on the ground within minutes. Any German armored counterattack during the Battle of Normandy or the drive across France was quickly spotted by tactical air reconnaissance and blown apart from the sky before it could reach the Allied lines. The ultimate destruction of the Luftwaffe also sent shockwaves across other fronts of the war. With German fighter strength concentrated in the west to defend against American bombers, the Eastern Front was stripped of adequate air protection. The Soviet Air Force gained control of the skies over Russia, accelerating the destruction of the German Army Group Center during Operation Bagration in the summer of 1944. The Third Reich was being squeezed from all sides, its skies completely dominated by its enemies. Looking back at this historic air campaign, the key to victory lay in the seamless integration of industrial capacity, engineering excellence, and aggressive tactical innovation. America did not just build more planes than its enemies. It built the right planes, adapted them rapidly to changing tactical realities, and deployed them with aggressive winning strategies. The combination of the Mustang airframe, the Merlin engine, the drop tank, and Doolittle's offensive doctrine created a weapon system that was far greater than the sum of its parts. The young men who flew those missions earned an eternal place in military history. Facing freezing temperatures, heavy flak, and deadly aerial combat miles above enemy territory, their courage and determination never wavered. Thousands of American pilots and bomber crewmen gave their lives in the skies over Germany, but their sacrifice bought the freedom of Western Europe and ensured the unconditional surrender of Nazi Germany. The air war over Germany was not won by luck or strategic errors on the part of the enemy. It was won by the colossal, unstoppable output of American industry. The fearless tactical leadership of commanders like Karl Spaatz and Jimmy Doolittle, the engineering genius of the P-51 Mustang, and the unwavering courage of young American airmen who flew into danger day after day. American resolve never broke. Instead, it crushed the air power of the Third Reich, secured the skies of Europe, and paved the way for absolute victory.